The FDA has released a memo, COVID shots, kids, and yes, we were right. Snap work rules, work dignity, and fake compassion. Plus, CNN is now partnering with Kalshi, markets versus polls versus narrative control. And then finally, Home Alone is a Christian movie, Christian symbolism in plain sight. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle studios here in sunny and chilly Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by the best heart health supplement in the world, Cardio Miracle. So if you all learn more about Cardio Miracle, you can scan that little QR code over my shoulder or simply head to cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. Either way, you'll know you're in the right spot when you see a little notification at the top of your screen saying you're shopping with Brian Nichols, which means you will get 15% off your order at checkout. One more time, cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. But yeah, we got a couple of different topics we're going to talk about today. So first, the FDA's top vaccine regulator, Vinay Prasad, he sent an internal email saying his team concluded that COVID vaccines caused at least 10 deaths in children and that the FDA, quote, must tighten vaccine rules going forward. The kids he's talking about were roughly between the ages of 7 to 16 years old, investigated via reports and death records between 2021 and 2024. He calls it a profound revelation and writes, quote, for the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that, yes, the COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. So we're going to go ahead and listen to one of my favorite comedians, Adam Carolla, over on the Adam Carolla Show, digging into this. And just heads up, earmuffs in advance for any kids who maybe are in the car, mom and dad, while you're listening to the show. Adam lets his thoughts known at the end of this clip in a very not so friendly for kids or work, for that matter, type of way. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
That at least 10 children died after and because of receiving the COVID vaccine.
Well, look, if they were healthy, then that's more kids than died of COVID while healthy. It's all the kids. It all back to the kids. Every road's to the kids. That's all they did was the kids. That's all they did was scare dumb mamas. Dumb mamas controlled the house, and dumb mamas became their foot soldiers and did their fucking bidding. So it's basically like you go, look, what do you want? You go, well, I want everyone to not take ivermectin and not take hydroxychloroquine and get vaccinated and stay in and shelter in place and wipe everything out with Purell. You are not going to get that done with me. You will get it done with a dumbass wife. You poison her brain and you get to her, and then she inflicts. She is the disciplinarian. She lays down all the rules, the COVID rules at the house, right? And the way you get her is you scare her about kids. That's what works with her. So kids. If they had just said at the beginning of this, you know, it doesn't really appear to harm healthy kids. It just doesn't. It just doesn't seem to.
Which, by the way, we were saying here at the Brian Nichols Show from the very beginning. We were having experts on despite being silenced, and we were talking about that very thing, right? We were discussing that exact thing. Kids aren't being seen to actually be harmed by this, at least not in significant numbers, much like those at-risk demographics were. And if we're going to talk about actually protecting people, let's focus the protection on those who actually need the protection, not trying to do this one-size-fits-all, we're all in this together mentality. And this is really the Anthony Fauci AIDS perspective. This is how we approached the AIDS epidemic back in the 80s and 90s, the HIV and AIDS, was everybody is a risk, right? Everybody could get AIDS. And that is the exact same mentality that he carried forward over to the COVID response.
It's like maybe a flu or a cold to a healthy young person. So it doesn't really seem to affect kids. It would have been a totally different trajectory. We wouldn't have shut the schools down. We wouldn't have shut society. If they had
never shut the
told us what they knew about kids, then we would have gone a different direction, but they never did. They never did. They wouldn't, because they held that, they guarded that information, and they guarded that information because once you let the kids off the danger hook, like you said, it doesn't appear to really be dangerous to healthy kids, then every mom in the world would have stopped enforcing all the retarded edicts they put before her.
Yep.
And that's where we got. And that's why the dumb moms got the fucking kids vaccinated. It was totally unnecessary for them.
Absolutely.
And now it's dangerous. Thanks, moms. Great job. Next time, ask a fucking question, would you please, before you light your Fauci candle? Fucking dumb shits.
Yep.
Everyone in this fucking safety sphere and all this thing, it's fucking us up. You guys fucked up your kids in the name of safety. Good job, moms.
Smart.
Keep listening to dopes who lie to you.
And listen, we were right on this show in the movement to question this. We raised red flags about mandates. We raised flags about the one-size-fits-all on the shots for healthy kids. And what happened? We got censored. We were demonetized. We were shadow banned. Think back to what the old Twitter administration had done to us. We were throttled. Our Facebook reach cratered. YouTube channels basically have been broken for us since COVID. X and Twitter, even to this day, by the way, are still broken even after Elon supposedly restored everything. And no, we weren't saying that no one should ever take the shot. What we were saying, though, was that forcing this on low-risk kids and banning questions, no, not the approach to take. Like this is the opposite of how we should be trying to address this. The other thing, by the way, in any normal conversation, if you're confident in your product, you welcome objections, right? This is something from my sales world. And what the COVID regime did was the exact opposite. They labeled dissent as misinformation. They colluded with platforms to silence dissenting doctors, parents, and shows like ours. And now, years later, what happened? The FDA is actually admitting, hey, we think that these shots actually killed at least 10 kids. They're basically pointing to the mandates on healthy kids that have been harmful, the things that we were calling out against from the very beginning, but were silenced from saying. So listen, if you're so sure you're right that you have to ban everyone who disagrees, you're not doing science. You're doing a state religion. And this has led to institutional trust being absolutely cooked. Like, this issue wasn't, again, just vaccines good, vaccines bad. It was government plus corporate press plus tech platforms. They all partnered to force a product on low-risk kids. They hid the harm signals behind bureaucratic BS, and they punished anyone who raised any questions, whether they thought that those questions were worth of being asked or not. And then 5 years later, the same exact system is quietly admitting, yep, y'all were right. Oops, there were deaths, and yet they still want to be the ones who are in control of what you say. It's insane. This is the government experts that we've had for years, right? And by the way, speaking of government experts making decisions about your life from 2,000 miles away, let's talk about the meltdown over asking able-bodied adults to work 20 hours a week if they want to the rest of us to buy their groceries. This is just absolutely insane. So what happened under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act? Trump raised the SNAP work requirements age limit from 54 to 64. So now able-bodied adult workers between the ages of 18 and 64 now have to work, train, or volunteer at least 80 hours per month, which is 20 hours per week or 4 hours a day to keep their long-term benefits. And if they don't meet that, the benefits stop after 3 months in any 3-year period with exemptions for disability, kids, etc. I mean, the most obvious thing to point out here is that if you are having issues with 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's insanity, especially when it could be anything, paid work, training, volunteer work. Does that sound like tyranny? Does that sound like fascism to you? Or is this the bare minimum for a capable adult living in a wealthy country? And I just want to point to a video that helps just exemplify what we're dealing with here. Let's go ahead and see who's being impacted here by
these changes to snap. All right, it's the holidays, which means we're all doing that annual dance, pretending that we love this time of year while secretly we're running on stress, sugar, and whatever's left of our sanity. You've got the office parties, the family gatherings, the flights, the long lines, the weird cookie that Aunt Carol made, and on top of that, the weather's colder, you're eating heavier, you're sleeping less, and your immune system is basically sending you texts saying like, hey buddy, I'm not okay. And let's be real, December has a way of exposing everything your body has already been struggling with. Low energy, amplified. Brain fog, doubled. Circulation, frozen like your car windshield. And don't even get me started on inflammation after you've had your 5th helping of just a little more at dinner. See, that's where Cardio Miracle comes in. It gives your body that one thing the holidays steal the most, nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is actually what helps the blood flow. It helps oxygen reach your cells, support your immune system, and helps your body bounce back from the stress, the sugar, the travel, the cold weather, all of it. And I've been drinking it every day, morning and night, because I don't have time to crash halfway through the month. And Cardio Miracle keeps me steady, clear-headed, energized, and able to actually enjoy the holidays instead of just survive them. So if you want to give yourself the gift of not feeling like you're worn out at Christmas, just go ahead and scan the QR code over my shoulder, click that little link in the show notes, or visit cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to grab yours. And by the way, you'll get 15% off at checkout. And now, let's get back to the show.
I don't think it's fair that he do that, but...
And you were saying you think it's going to hurt a lot of people?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely it's going to hurt a lot of people because you never know. You know what? Especially now that we're in the holidays and everybody wants to have a good dinner and everything. And if you don't give it to them, it's going to be really hard.
It's very sudden and it will affect people negatively.
I don't think it's...
Like, I'm sorry. No, first of all, work is dignifying. It's not degrading. It pulls people out of isolation and out of dependency. There's nothing wrong with actually expecting people to do work. But just this fake compassion. I mean, to the politicians, to the people who say, hey, I'm sorry, you're too fragile to work 20 hours. They aren't helping people get better or grow. What they're doing is locking people into permanent dependency so they can harvest their votes. But ideally, who are the folks that we want to rely on actually solving these problems? It's churches, it's charities, it's local communities that are handling the support. But if the state's going to run a massive program with 40 plus million people, and then over $99 billion a year in some insane amount in spending, asking some work, just a little in return, is I think the least you can do. And this just, I think, ties into the broader theme that everybody loves talking about rights, food rights, housing rights, phone rights, but nobody wants to talk about responsibilities. You can care about poor people and believe that adults should be expected to do something productive in society while they're able-bodied. That's how you keep the system sustainable, but also moral, right? So yeah, we've got government struggling with basic incentives, like maybe people should work. I don't know. It's just a thought. But now they also want to tell you what the future holds. Oh, well, maybe it's not the government, but it's CNN. Yeah, that's what we call a segue, I guess. CNN is suddenly discovering wisdom of prediction markets. Apparently, CNN is partnering with Kalshi, a federally regulated prediction market, as its official prediction market data partner. So for folks who are unfamiliar, Kalshi lets people bet real money on yes/no questions like elections, policy outcomes, and then they aggregate those prices into implied odds. So CNN is planning to use Kalshi's real-time probabilities across TV, digital, and social as part of its analysis. And by the way, Kalshi correctly called Trump's 2024 win when traditional polling missed it. That's why we're seeing this happen now. This is why things are changing the way that they are. I mean, first of all, polls measure what people say, right? Prediction markets, though, where people are betting their real hard-earned money on the outcomes, that's different. That's risk that people are willing to actually put skin in the game versus just I feel like, right? So this, I would say, is actually a good thing because it's giving us more signals that are going to be beating more of just the I feels can be manipulated, right? By media. When you see people putting their money towards a specific outcome, that's showing you that there's more to that than just an I feel. Again, it's more than just the warm and fuzzies. Warm and fuzzies are important, but they're not the end all be all. But the same media, again, that mocked the betting markets, it's just funny. They were calling them fringe back in 2024. Now it's just they're like, we're going to have a chyron on our screen now because, it worked. They were right. So let's talk about why CNN is doing this. I think some possible motives. I mean, first of all, I think they're trying to rebuild the credibility after getting so many of the major elections wrong. And so many of the folks that were the face of CNN, right? The Brian Stelters of the world, the Don Lemons of the world, just cringe and and demeaning. Even Chris Cuomo, he's tried to do this entire recovery tour over on News Nation, but still that condescending, how dare you ask questions, especially during COVID. They're trying to go back, CNN again, to this shiny data-driven badge. Look, we're not biased. The market's saying this. That's the vibe I'm getting, at least, but they still, of course, are picking which markets to show, right? They're still going to frame the story around numbers, and they're still going to decide the narratives, which ones are going to get airtime. And that's something I think we all can predict. Kalshi still will be Kalshi, so we can all pay attention to what they're paying attention to. But I'm very curious to see how CNN is going to incorporate this. Now, just because CNN uses market odds doesn't suddenly make CNN not CNN. So we have to keep that in mind. But also there's some good, bad, and some risky stuff here with this, right? So the good, normal people are going to start seeing that the crowd with money on the line often sees through spin. They will I guess almost have their lenses on, their goggles on that help them see past the BS, because there is real outcomes that are in their favor or in their detriment based on the outcome. So it's also going to help, I would think, reduce reliance on garbage polling that swings wildly week to week. And we saw this going into the election, right? We saw, I think it was Iowa, where that poll came out showing that Kamala Harris was winning by 5 points in Iowa, only to have Trump dominate the state. So it's stuff like that. If you were looking at the betting markets, I don't think the betting markets ever put Iowa ever in the probability or the reality of Kamala Harris getting it. So it's stuff like that to pay attention to, I think, from a good perspective. But there are some risks, right? If regulators and media start treating markets as destiny, you risk self-fulfilling prophecies. So we also have to watch for which questions Kalshi is allowed to list. Regulators have blocked some markets based on sensitive outcomes in the past. So I'm curious if there's anything that might play into here. But in general, we want free markets in information. We don't want government micromanaging what people can and can't bet on. And I think this is true in this world as well. But we also don't want media hiding behind the market to push their preferred stories. So I think transparency is going to be important here. But yeah, hey, we got the FDA. They're rewriting history. You got the welfare state is finally asking for a time card, and CNN's outsourcing its crystal ball to the betting market. But let's end where we probably should have started this whole episode, because it's actually happy, and it's something that I enjoy talking about, and that's Christmas, faith, and why Home Alone might secretly be one of the most Christian movies ever made. I know, I believe it or not. I know you don't really hear too much of the Christian faith talked about in the movie, but let's think about this for a second, right? And this is a theory I saw presented online. I want to walk you through the theory. Kevin, towards the end of the movie, he's drawn off the noisy, chaotic street into the beauty and the warmth of the church, and then he walks in, and the choir is singing. What are they singing? "O Holy Night." And what verse does he first hear? "Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices." While the sanctuary candle, the camera pans across, in the foreground you see the candle in the background, and that's a traditional symbol of Christ's presence. And then who does Kevin talk to? He has heart-to-heart with old man Marley, who in Home Alone, he kind of functions as a Christ figure, a grace figure in the story. And this entire time you kind of think you're watching this kid just throw bricks at burglars, right? But actually, there's a low-key Christian allegory. Like, all right, think about it. The church scene, right? Kevin gets in lonely, afraid, still kind of a selfish brat. He hears the hymn, he sees the candle, and then he chooses to step into a sacred space, and that's where his heart changes, right? He decides to protect his home and reconcile with his family. Family was more important. But also, think about the story of Old Man Marley, and it's fascinating when you go back to the very beginning of the movie. The community treats Marley like a monster, or at least Buzz does, right? He says that he's the shovel slayer. And in the church, he reveals the truth. No, I'm just misunderstood. I have an estranged son, and I'm carrying pain. And Kevin, of all people, offers wisdom, comfort, and courage. And he literally shows up at the end, old man Marley is, then to save Kevin when Kevin can't save himself from the burglars. And it's this classic savior appears when all hope is lost kind of approach here. Also, one thing, wounded hand. We see in the movie earlier, Marley's hand, he's at the pharmacy and it's wrapped up. And you see, not only is there a bandage, but there's literally a hole in his hand, right? Like it looks like it's an entire hole. But then pay attention when he reconciles with his family, it's gone. It's healed. Saying Christ's pierced hands, idea, old wounds can be healed through forgiveness and grace. Just saying, and also one thing too, there's this thing with prodigal son, right? Marley talks about his estranged son. Kevin encourages him to reconcile, basically tell him, hey, take the risk, go back. At the end of the movie, we see that reunion that I just mentioned, and it is kind of like that prodigal son coming home. And then I think it's really cool to see Kevin's moral arc. He starts off wishing his family literally would disappear. He's selfish, he's bratty, he's fed up. And then throughout the story, but then more specifically in his encounter at church, he owns his mistakes. He decides to defend his home, and not just defend his home, but to do the right thing. And then the movie ends. He is grateful for his family. He's not resentful of them anymore. And there is repentance in the movie. There is transformation, not just slapstick humor, even though it is funny. I watched it just literally over this past weekend with my family, and I was laughing quite a bit, except the part with the nail in the foot on the stairs and the tar. Gets me every time. But no, I do think it is important, to really pay attention to the underlying stories that are in some of our favorite stories that do have these, many cases, Christian ethos or ties. So go down below into the comments. Let me know, what is your favorite subtle Christian tie-in to some popular piece of, whether it's pop culture, like a TV show, a movie, a story. Chronicles of Narnia. I think the author literally said that it is supposed to be a depiction of God represented in the books, right? So I just want to hear what you've seen out there in the pop culture space. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye for today's conversation. I had a lot of fun doing the one-on-one overview of the news with you. Hopefully you got some value from that as well. But I think with that being said, folks, if you could do me a favor, go ahead and give today's episode a share. And when you do, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. You can find me over on X, Facebook, and Instagram. As for The Brian Nichols Show, you can find The Brian Nichols Show wherever it is you consume your podcast content or you watch your videos. So for the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or for the video versions of the show, YouTube, Rumble, and also over on X, on Facebook. And you can actually check the episodes of The Brian Nichols Show in video format on Spotify as well. You just toggle over to the video setting on the Spotify app, and you can watch The Brian Nichols Show. You can watch us. I know. How exciting, 2025. It's magic. I don't know. With that being said, one final ask, folks. If you do enjoy these episodes of The Brian Nichols Show, the best way you can support us is either A, by giving us a one-time donation over at briannicholsshow.com, or supporting the folks who support us, like our phenomenal studio sponsors, Cardio Miracle, or you can go ahead. We have other sponsors over at briannicholsshow.com/sponsors, like Ebel's CBD, Liquid Freedom, Energy Tea, Blood of Tyrants Wine, and more. Over, again, one more time, briannicholsshow.com/sponsors. But that's all we have for you, folks. Thank you for joining us. Happy Friday. And with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.